again, a welcome to week 2 for those of you who have just joined us. It is my very great pleasure to welcome one of our head teachers from the Diocese of Plymouth, Dawn Potterton, who is going to share a little bit of her story with you about how she's ended up where she has and what on earth she's doing here maybe. Dawn's going to talk for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will open up a question session. And what we ask is if you just type your question into the chat, please, and then I shall invite you to ask your question when we're ready. So Dawn, it's such a pleasure to have you here. I know you're going to be wonderful. I'm sure you're very nervous, but everyone here is very, very lovely, I'm sure. So, big welcome, Dawn.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that warm welcome. And it's lovely to see so many people here today. It's an absolute privilege to be speaking today. And when Sarah asked me, I didn't quite know how different this week would feel from the week she asked me. And I thought we already had a pretty good idea. So yes, the title is very apt. Help, what am I doing here? So just a little bit about me first. I've been in education for 27 years, and my leadership journey started 5 years ago. So I moved into assistant headship 5 years ago, and then on to a head of school role over at Holy Cross in Plymouth, and then very briefly as acting head at Cathedral School. And then I was able to apply for the role as head here at St. Paul's, and I've been here since January last year, January 2019. So I'm just into my second year of headship, and I ironically thought that the second year might be easier than the first, and then we were hit with the challenge that we're currently facing. So I want to start by talking about what my why is, why I do what I do, why I've ended up here, and why I've taken the decisions I have along the way. And those have been very careful decisions, because everyone that knows me knows that I don't tend to do things in a knee-jerk way. I'm very mindful. And I'm also a great believer in trying to bring things wherever possible down to encapsulating it in one word. And so I thought very deeply about how I could sum up the why. And the word that for me sums that up the most is transform. I believe in the power of education to transform. And that's why I do what I do and why I've ended up where I am. And if I could take that back just for a moment even further, before I even began in my career, back to my childhood, which we all know is often where the decisions we make in later life are rooted in the experiences we have early on. And I want to talk just for a very short while about my father. And my father worked for several years with families, working for a company that I still at times struggle to completely work out why he worked for the company, because it didn't completely sit with him, because it was a loan company. And the loan company often would target people that possibly wouldn't be able to pay back. And my father felt very strongly about this and would refuse to take on any cases, any families where this would be the case. And that early experience of him fighting a system and working to make a change was there for me from early childhood. And he would often take my brother and I to the area that he would often work in, and he would ask us to really open our eyes to what was going on outside of our bubble. And I certainly didn't have a what I would call a privileged childhood. We had a very standard, normal childhood, very warm, very loving childhood, so I feel very blessed, but certainly we weren't privileged. But my father had this real drive for look beyond what you know and look out to what's going on in this world and think about how you can make a difference and how can you change it. And he strongly believed in equality. Any inequality would really infuriate him. And I've picked that up from him. And so when I applied for the head, so coming to the first heading actually in the chapter that we're looking at today, the first part around why, sorry, not the first chapter, I apologise, the first reflection to think back to when you were appointed and what led you to apply. The reason I applied to the headship at St. Paul's is because the community that we serve here, there is huge deprivation, huge inequality, huge suffering and lack of aspiration and lack of opportunity. And that, for me, answers what I feel I'm called to do. And I believe that's partly come from my father's influence, but also from listening to what's in my heart and what God's saying to me and what he's calling me to do. And all the way through my work, I root the decisions I take in trying to right that inequality. And the dignity of the individual drives me every single day of my work. Holding each person up for the person that they were created to be, and they might not even know what that is now any more than any of us know, but God created them to be, and to be someone and to do something and to preserve that dignity and to be part of that service in serving our community, adults and children, every single one of our community, by preserving their dignity. And that filters through everything that I do, in how I treat people, in the decisions I take, and as I say, everything that I'm doing day in, day out. And it's sometimes difficult to grasp the depth of our mission. We all talk about our mission in a Catholic school, but it's sometimes challenging to grasp that, particularly when, as currently, where we're going through that period of very much help, what am I doing here, and falling into maybe sometimes operational work. And it's really important for me to come back to that and remind myself of why I do what I do. I'd like to take each section of the chapter and relate that to my story, and I will pull the reflections as we go, the points for reflection as we move through. So that first moment when you wonder what you're doing here, where maybe you think that you've ended up, for whatever reason, in a school that you're very happy and it feels like it's working for you, but you have those moments where you just stop and think, but what am I actually doing here? Why am I here? What difference am I making? And if I again go back in time and think back to my very first teaching post, it wasn't part of my plan. I started in Catholic education right at the very beginning. I started as an NQT in a Catholic school, but I didn't plan that. And it seems quite ironic to me now that I've been a Catholic all of my life, and I've ended up working in Catholic education all of my life, and yet I entered education without that plan in mind. I just wanted to teach and I wanted to make a difference. And a job came up at a Catholic school, and I therefore went for it. And it wasn't until I got there and realised the difference that could make and the capacity for change that I fell in love with it. And my journey is very unusual because I started as an NQT at the very school that I'm now head. So I've come full circle. I started here. I worked in other schools later on as cover when I was coming back in after having had a family. And then I ended up back at St. Paul's again, left to do some other leadership work, and then returned. So I've had quite an interesting journey. But the power of working in Catholic school, where that power to transform is so much stronger, because we've got God beside us. We've got God everywhere to give us that energy to push that transformation forward. And we've got that guidance, because we certainly haven't got all the answers. And so it's an incredibly privileged position to be in, to work in a Catholic school. But those moments when you think, what am I doing here? I just urge you to stop and centre and to pray and to listen and to, again, as I said earlier, come back to the depth of your mission and pull back to what is your why. And so when we think about the thought that possibly if we're not from a Catholic background and not always sure that we fit in, I'm a great believer in turning this on its head. Although obviously I am a Catholic, I clearly am not surrounded by everyone that's baptised Catholics. And if I could talk for a moment about my mother, who is not Catholic and yet drove my faith from an early age, believed that this was the right thing to do and wanted to take me to church and wanted to foster that growing faith. And so she has brought so much to my life, and you have so much to bring, no matter where you're coming from, no matter what your faith is. You have so much to bring to this journey that we're all on. So I do believe in turning that on its head, the idea of I'm not always sure I fit in, and thinking about that in a different way, and really coming back to the idea that to be Catholic, it means universal, as it states very clearly in the book, and that everyone should feel valued. So at this point, I'd like to pose 3 questions. I know that you're going to be posing questions, but I'd really like to pose 3 questions for you to start considering. And that is, and I said this to a member of staff the other day, what do you bring? What do you bring? And the conversation I was having was not a negative one, I must stress, but it was really interesting to work with a member of staff who could talk very clearly about what other members of the team brought to the table, as it were, but couldn't talk about what she brought. And so I think that's really important, that we consider what do you bring? What do we bring to this? And what is your why? And what are you called to do? And so I could very much be in the where we talk in the paragraph around I'm a baptised Catholic, but that's about it. I don't always feel comfortable. I could have been there at times, and I certainly have been. I have been in those moments. My experience of my faith is, I'm sure, like many people, a long journey. And I would say just before I moved to Holy Cross as head of school, my faith at that point, I've described this many times to people, was incredibly quiet. So it was strong, absolutely strong, a strong belief. But I certainly didn't go around talking to lots of people about it. And actually that missed the point, because the whole purpose of what God wants from us is to spread that word, to go out there and live out the mission. And so I was really missing that, I would say, at that point, when just before I moved to Holy Cross. And so I've gone on quite an intense journey since then, with engaging more in things such as a prayer group I joined, where I was able to really deeply explore what my prayer life was and what that meant for me, and what God wanted from me, and to stop and listen. That was critical. And the other part of the journey that was crucial for me was the opportunity to take part in the Aspiring Heads programme with CAST. And that was an incredible experience and made such a difference to my formation and where I am today, because I was so better prepared to articulate what my faith was for me, and to consider again what God wanted from me in my role, but also in my personal life. So I would urge everyone to consider that there are definitely times of doubt and drift. Those are definitely there. Those are definitely there for all of us as we come up against challenge. But I would urge us to keep exploring our faith and to keep that alive by continually revisiting. I was really interested in the paragraph in the chapter that we're studying today on the bar seeming set very high and worrying about not always living up to expectations. And there's a real sense that I pick up when I'm working with people around thinking that maybe other people have this sorted and that we're in a position where it's all okay and we're all prepared and we're all perfect and we've all got it absolutely nailed. And that's completely not the case. And yes, we have always known that as a teacher that we have those professional standards to aspire to that are already expecting amazing things of us anyway, and God asks even more. But I think I've had to really hold on to the idea that we cannot achieve perfection. We know that only God can achieve that. And that's very comforting, and that's really helped me in my leadership journey, because I think particularly when you move into headship, and this part I wasn't quite prepared for, there were lots of things I wasn't prepared for, but this certainly I wasn't, is the amount of belief that people have in you very, very quickly that you are in that role, and therefore you must be this ideal and you must know absolutely everything about anything, and that you will instantly know the answer to any question. And that can be quite debilitating at times, because it's a huge load to carry. And again, that's where the source of energy is in the prayer, and also the reaching out to other people around us in our community. And I've certainly felt very supported by that. So coming back to my mission to strive to transform, to make a change, it can be really dispiriting when we consider where things are wrong in the church, and that's certainly something I've struggled to consider for some time. But I strongly agree with the statement that it does not take away the determination to make things better. And I'd like to just read a quote which I'm very much into reading, and I have lots of quotations that I love, and this is one of my favourites, and it's from a book called The Compassionate Teacher, Why Compassion Should Be at the Heart of Our Schools. And I read it as part of the Aspiring Heads programme. It wasn't one I was signposted to, but I found it at the time, and it's a really powerful text, and it's by Andy Salmons. And he says, by doing without thinking or acting in accordance with real values, we master no more than the art of distraction. Real integrity and credibility comes not only from choosing what to do, but choosing what not to do. And that's really inspired me as I've continued in my role, and the idea that we must challenge, and that although there are things that aren't necessarily always going as they should, what difference can we make to that? And this, again, coming back to one of the points for reflection, what do you see in your day-to-day experience in the school? What aspects of it might you regard as negative? If so, what stops you from challenging them? And this is something I've worked really hard on with our team in the just over a year time that I've been here, in terms of being able to have straight conversations with people and being able to ask difficult questions, but being able to be honest and open. And we're still on that journey, because some people are really scared of that, and they don't want to feel that they're saying something that someone else might not like, so they'd rather maybe hide behind an email or by talking to someone else. And so we're building a culture here at St. Paul's of being able to have those open conversations, and I model that by never sending an email to any of my team that is about anything that would be negative. So I wouldn't be talking about anything that had gone wrong through an email. I always have a face-to-face conversation. And I think at first that was quite intimidating for our team, because they weren't quite used to that, and they were not really sure. And actually, and I found this quite another part where you have a shock when you come into headship, they were quite scared. And I couldn't quite get my head around why anyone would be scared of me, but they were. This idea that you're going to the head's office is incredible, that in 2020 that we still feel this way. But we've really worked on that, and the idea that I'm going to say it to you directly, we're going to discuss it, we're going to find a way, we're going to talk about what's going on there, and what's your journey, what's your lived experience, and why do people do what they do? Because that, for me, is always my question. I'm always trying to work out, why do people do what they do? And because if we can work that out, then actually we can build and we can develop and we can make things even better than they are. But we've got to work together on that. And so that's still very much a work that we are still very much working on. But the culture is shifting. The culture is shifting, and they know that if they receive an email which is something general, that it's in no way a very careful dig at one person that's just been put in a generalized email. We just don't. I refuse to work that way.
Dawn, thank you. You've got about 30 seconds left. Please.
Oh wow, that has gone really quickly. I'd just like to say that I'd urge everyone to find out in detail about the mission statement of your school, and to think about what you can do to contribute to that, because that's always being reviewed. It's always something we want to revisit, and it's what can you bring to that again? What do you bring to that? And just finally to say that there is, when you come into Catholic education, that real tension between the number of hours in a day, and suddenly you realise there are far more things you need to pack in a Catholic school, and there can be sometimes that tension of, well, do we really need all of this? And I urge you to look at the sheer power and energy that you will achieve from engaging fully in everything that is there within a Catholic school, both in terms of the RE, but also, more importantly, in terms of the worship. So I urge you to fully engage in that and consider the power. I'm sure that must be over 30 seconds, Sarah.
Dawn, thank you so much. There was so much in that to give us food for thought. And as you were going, I did put your questions there in the chat there, because if anybody would like to come back and just share their reflection, that's fine. Maybe just type your name in the chat there so that I know. We have got a lot of very experienced head teachers and some newer ones here today, which we're very lucky. We've got Sister Judith Rossi here from Educarum. We've got Martin Johnson, we've got Brendan Duffy, Julianne Clare, who was one of our speakers last week. We've got quite a few of our own head teachers from the Diocese of Plymouth. So we have a whole wealth of people here to help us answer your questions. So it's not often, it's just so fabulous that there are so many of us from all around the country, really, but it's not often that you get such a fabulous group of people. I can see we've got Nicole Barber here. Well done, Nicole, you made it this week, from Redemptorists, who are supporting us. And yeah, we have made reference to the book. Obviously, you don't have to do it. We're not keeping to it, completely that closely, but I would urge you to consider buying it, particularly if you're new to working in Catholic schools. So we haven't had any chats, any questions come up in the chat yet that have reached me. So I wonder if anybody would like to come up with a, oh, hang on, there's one, just we're talking. So Yasmin, is it Yasmin? Yasmin, would you like to open up your mic and ask your question, please?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. So my question was, if we are to enable children to be all that God made them to be, how do we view and respond to children in our schools who God chose to be born into a different faith tradition?
So do you want me to answer?
If you want to have a go, and then I'm sure there will be others. I can see Julianne's got something to add. I can see your hand up, Julianne. Thank you.
I would say that we still, a Catholic school can be as inclusive as any school. It's about celebrating individuality and recognising that faith is the most precious thing. So for me, it's around welcome and about bringing everyone in, bringing everyone together, getting to know each child individually, getting to know the family, getting to know their story, and getting to know what their lived experience is, and then meeting them where they are. And for me, that's about allowing them to lead prayer, allowing them to contribute their experience, finding out more about their faith and encouraging that within the school. And that's very much there in our RE curriculum, that we should know about other faiths. That's incredibly important. And crucially, keeping hold of the idea that that child is precious. And therefore, if we put the child at the centre of everything we're doing, then we're not going to go far wrong. But for me, it's about that open up, the welcome, bring the family, bring the child in, find out their story.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. We have got another question here from Rachel. Rachel, would you like to open up your mic?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you have any tips at all for NQT starting this year.
Are you in NQT?
I will be, hopefully.
You will be. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, lots. It's one of the disappointments actually for me now as head that I don't work as actively with NQTs as I used to, because that's an incredible role to be an NQT mentor. I would say to you and to all NQTs, soak it up, soak every single experience up. I always encourage NQTs to get out and see what's going on within your own school and then beyond. And certainly in your first time, I'd encourage you to see what's going on within your own school before you go beyond, so you don't take on too much in one go. I would also encourage you to ask as many questions as you can. I think there's still a culture around, we create it ourselves, I think, don't we, that we don't always necessarily ask enough questions, and we are still guilty of not allowing children to ask enough questions. It's often teacher asking question and child answering, unfortunately, still largely. And I urge you to ask questions, because what I found, and I used to be very uncomfortable with asking questions, so I worried that it made it look as if I didn't know something I was supposed to know. And when I got to headship, that felt even more so. And then I realised one day I couldn't carry on in headship like this. I really did need to find things out that people were assuming I knew. And then I found out that lots of people didn't know them either. And so I would definitely say ask as many questions as you can, and be open about that, and celebrate that, really, and ask people to signpost you. So yeah, just soak it up. There's so much for you to experience. Oh, and also keep a reflective journal. And I've always believed in this for education anyway. I started one during my Aspiring Heads programme, so that was more of a prayer journal. But I always urge NQTs to keep a reflective journal and to follow your journey through your development, and really to keep that going for the entirety of your career, because there's so much then to reflect back on.
Thank you, Dawn. I'm sure there are quite a few others, and I know Julianne is keen to help us give feedback as well. But Rachel, I'm just thinking, this is such an opportunity for you. What is the area that you are looking for a job in? As in geographical.
Oh, I've got an appointment in Bury. I've got a job there. Hopefully,
You have, brilliant, fabulous.
Waiting for results today.
Welcome, Julianne. Have you got any particular tips for Rachel? Oh no, we can't hear you. Sign language. How many syllables? Hang on, let me see if I can do it. Oh, there we are.
Don't worry, I am wearing clothes. It's a strapless top. No, top tips for Rachel. NQTs are brilliant and you will be brilliant. But just with Dawn, thank you so much, Dawn. As a new head, it's really scary doing anything. And I thought that was fantastic. What I really liked was when you talked about how you felt about sharing your faith publicly. And I know exactly what you mean. I felt like that. And I wonder if it gets with age that you become happier with it on my part. But I had a great discussion with my deputy about this, about how we would publicly share our faith. And he's amazing and he wouldn't mind me saying this. And he said, I just think it's something that's really personal. I don't want to share it. And we do get on really well. I need to say that. And I just said, well, it's a really good job the didn't say that, wasn't it? And he was like, oh, harsh. But he then, as a result of that, has come back to me and said, I want more opportunities to share my faith, please. And I think Dawn sort of touched on those honest conversations, and that sometimes you have to have those conversations that they're not always light and fluffy. Sometimes they have to be challenging. So well done, Dawn, because you've cracked that after 1 year and I'm only just getting there after 12.
Thank you, Julianne. Carly, you have a question. Oh, you have a question for us.
Yes, we are all mission focused. Sometimes parents aren't, and it seems impossible to encourage some to engage fully. Any tips?
Yes, I think again coming back to so it's that part around finding out what their story is, finding out what their lived experience is. I had, this is going back a few years now, but we were getting real issue with a child that was arriving consistently late. And so we did that whole process around, oh, they're late, you know, we need to get them to come on time, we need to hurry up, all this sort of thing. And then I spoke to the mum one day, and it turned out that she was hugely intimidated by the whole idea of coming in the school gate and standing by the door where the clusters of mums would be, because she didn't feel she fitted in with those groups. And so she would feel sidelined. So she was deliberately arriving late with her daughter so that she would avoid that experience. And that was the only reason they were late every day. And when I found that out, it was a real moment of revelation for me that we have to find out what someone's story is before we can work out how we can improve it. Because if we don't know why they're doing what they're doing, then we're never going to make any difference. And actually to be able to work with that mum and to find ways of building connections for her and to build her confidence, actually then she was able to bring her daughter in. And that's a pattern I've seen all the way through my experience, is it's about why do people do what they do. So we have many parents who don't engage with the Catholic life of the school. We have many parents who don't engage with the educational life of the school. But we have equally many of those parents who are intimidated by that. And so I try not to make too big a deal of that. I just keep offering opportunities and I keep trying to find ways of getting people in. So we've done a huge piece of work around our Monday liturgy, where we have an open tea and coffee before liturgy. Really sort of simple idea, which I'm sure loads of schools are doing, but we just didn't have that. First, you know, when we first moved our liturgy to Monday morning, we didn't have that as something that was happening. And luckily, the geography of our school means that the parents and carers and grandparents and parishioners come in through an outside door into the canteen and then can be led into the hall by our group of school ambassadors when it's time for the liturgy to start. And we've built up a real culture with that, of people feeling, I'll come in for a tea or coffee and I'll have a chat, I'll get to know people. And then I might feel confident enough to come in, sit and join in with the liturgy. And we're building that, we're building momentum, but I certainly think it's a long game. I don't think it's something we'll achieve overnight, or anyone can achieve overnight. And just one last thing to say about parents, I've just thought, actually, sorry, I just thought of another idea, is that ultimately, what's their motivation? And this is the same thing as, why do people do what they do? So parents, largely, I can barely think of a parent that I've met who isn't completely wanting the best for their child. They might not always know the way to get there, and they're not saying that they might not always get it right, but largely the motivation is they want the best. So if we can find experiences that mean that their child is involved in something that they can come in and watch, maybe they'll come in. So that's often a way of getting them on board.
Fabulous, thank you, Dawn. Sister Judith, did you have anything to? I can't unmute you. There we go.
Yeah. I think the number one thing with parents is, just as Dawn was saying, is making them feel safe. We talk so much about children's safety, and as Dawn talked very eloquently about parents feeling safe. Also being very sensitive to the parents who might feel marginalized from the church. And that's a sensitive area. They're making an enormous faith statement when they bring their child to the school. And they'll bring their child to the school where they won't bring them to the church. And that's a whole nother package. Just also to pick up on that question of recognizing the God in every child, whether they're Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, Catholic, Christian, not sure what I am, but I'm here. We have that very firmly from Pope Francis, that every single person, God resides in them equally. It's not that Catholics are first-class citizens. It's equal. And that some people find difficult. Pope Francis made that statement a while back that God is not a Catholic. And that really upset a lot of people. Because God is much bigger than one religion. He's everything. And people, when the parents come to, when a parent brings their child to you, that's an enormous step in trust and faith that somehow you will be able to lead their child along the path of finding who they are, why they're here, and where they're going. And I used to say to parents who used to turn up at the door, it's a great privilege that you're sharing with us. This is what I believe about your child and what everybody believes here, that they are God's child. They are royal, and they carry a gift that the world waits for. Our task is to walk with you, to help your child, to bring to the world what nobody else can. If you want that for your child, we will be delighted to walk with you. Then if they just look at you blank and say that there are schools down the road that might not want that you might be more comfortable. But it's a way in for parents who are feeling, will my child be loved? Will my child who's not a Catholic, may not even be baptized, maybe another faith altogether, will they be second-class citizens? And every parent has the first fear of every parent is not how clever their child is. It's, will my child be loved? And once a mum or a dad or a nan knows that and feels the love coming from you at the door, suddenly mountains start to shrink. But it isn't easy to do, I know, because so many parents have so many issues. But it is literally, and sometimes, allowing them to come earlier. One mum said to me one day, Sister, I don't do 9 o'clock. And I was a bit taken aback. And I said, well, what do you mean? Because you're going to be late every single day and it's going to look terrible. And she said, I don't do 9 o'clock, dear. I said, well, what time do you do? She said, well, I might make it for 10:30. And when I said to her, why 10:30? She worked nights. And there was no way she could do this. And so I understood. We worked with it, shall we say. We gradually found other ways of getting that child there on time. But it took us a long time. But what I didn't do was judge her. And we just said, well, you know what? the data is a real issue, but the person's bigger.
That's lovely. Sister Judith, thank you so much. I think we could probably spend the rest of the afternoon sharing experiences of encouraging and supporting parents. But we have got another question here from C. Taylor Wilson. I'm not sure if that's Charlotte. You've got a question. If you could open up your mic, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hi. So my question, I'm just reflecting on Dawn asking about the why, and my why is really about the early years and a real passion for early education in the early years in particular. And I just wanted to ask, could people give me some top tips on how to shape the early years curriculum so that the beliefs and the values of the Catholic Church really shape what I teach and what my team will teach, because I am new to teaching in a Catholic school?
Thank you. Any early years specialists out there? Do you want to open up your mic or put up your hand? I can't see any. Dawn, are you happy to give it a go for now?
Yeah, I'm not an EYFS specialist, but I have worked in early years, and my initial training actually was with our youngest children. So what I would say is critically just to, again, meet the child where they are. So I know Sarah's done some incredible work around godly play, which I've never explored fully, but I've certainly read about it, and I think that's an incredibly powerful thing to use with young children. And Sarah will be able to tell you more about that. But bringing it to where they are, so it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. It's the same principles that you would use for teaching young children, you would use in praying and worshipping with them. We have a foundation class here where, and unfortunately we don't have a nursery, but we do have a reception class. And our foundation children, our very youngest foundation children, when they first come in, will sit and come together in a circle, and they have a prayer bear, and the prayer bear's passed around, and they offer their own prayers. And I think that's really important from an early age, that they're able to offer their prayer, to pray in their words, and not necessarily always to be given ours. They introduce them to that, but also allow them to say, what might you like to say to God today, or what might God be saying to you, and having time for stillness and to listen.
Dawn, that's beautiful. Thank you. Jane Day, I know you are out there and you probably would not put yourself forward, but I know the lovely work that you have done because I have seen it from when I was your head teacher. Will you open up your mic for us, Jane, and share some ideas for Candice?
Okay. Hello, everyone.
No pressure.
I've gone red. One of the main things we always do with the children is we all do hooks for most of our topics. So when you're doing any kind of literacy, and we did the same approach with the any God Matters topic that we were using. So we'd start with the story, because a lot of the time you're looking at it and within that topic you've got a story. So we would start with the story and really act out a lot of God's stories, Jesus's stories, and so that the children could retell them. And they did it in such a way that you get so much out of them. You know, you're giving it to them, so you're starting it off with a beautiful story, and the children then make of it what they will. They have done so many things. We've done obviously reenacting it for the rest of the school, and having themes and parts of the school that are just for them to show that, because they're so open at that age to God, no matter what their faith is, their faith in that what we're talking about is what matters. And so they're just so open and honest and beautiful that you can just let them fly with it. And a lot of the topics that I ever did, you found that God would be at the centre of it without you even trying, because they brought it in.
Janie, could you tell us a little bit about your Easter experience last year, please? I won't show the photos, although I have them.
The photo I look like a homeless person, but actually I was Mary Magdalene, and we built a tent outside. And so that when the parents came up the hill and with the children, all the school, I was just sat against this empty tomb, and I would start wailing. We did it in groups, so we did it in the mornings when most of the school came through, and then we did it for the afternoon, and then Jesus suddenly appeared, and they
in his loincloth.
In his loincloth. But it's immersing them in it. It was, they knew it was me, but they didn't question me doing that, because that's what I do. It's like I did one time feeding of the 5,000, and I did my fish fingers underneath the cloth, and they only could see 2 fish fingers, but my hand was going underneath and kept doing it. So it was, they all went home. There was a miracle at school. You wouldn't believe it. Mrs. Day showed us a miracle. And that was the same with that day. It's just immersing them in it and giving yourself totally to it. And if you believe in it, which I love bringing children's passion for Jesus out of them. So it was just an easy thing to do. So just love them and show them the way, and they will guide you the rest of the way so easily.
Thank you, Jane. Candice, I hope that was helpful. One more thing from me to add. Don't lower your expectations, because they're early years. They don't have the boundaries that older children have. So, keep those expectations high for them, because they are capable of marvellous things. And Jane will know the wow moments that I have seen from early years teaching. When I was a head teacher, if ever I was having a bad day, you'd always find me in nursery or reception, because they would be the bit that they make your heart sing, the things that they say and do. And they are just capable of such great things, and they give you such beautiful moments, like the time we were blessing the whole school, and we went around with the priest, and we had a sprig of rosemary, and we were blessing, and then we had the children involved in every classroom. We had our prayer chaplains, and they came and they did the blessing in each room. And there was a little boy in the nursery who was just so loving this, and he blessed everyone, including Jane, who was there at the time, blessed every bit in the room and the teachers, and then all the children did the same. And then a couple of days later, and he said to me, "Do you know what, Mrs. Bretto, as I was in that school, I had a dream last night, and God came to me and he said, 'Well done,' he said, 'well done for doing the school.'" So we might not have remembered that we were blessing the school, but it was just a beautiful moment, because I actually had no doubt that probably God had spoken to him in that dream. It was just unfortunate that he hadn't remembered the key words, but we did work on it further. Thank you, great question.
Sarah, can I just jump in there?
Yeah, Martin, please do.
I've got the great privilege of having Candice as my new early years lead that started during lockdown.
Oh gosh.
One of the big things to remember, and I'm certainly not an early years specialist, is that in a Catholic school, the whole curriculum is a sacred experience. And there is not one subject that's sacred, all of it is sacred. And if we go in with that kind of, we call it a building the kingdom approach through Educarum and that programme. But if we go in with that approach that everything is sacred and everybody is made to bring a gift that the world's been waiting for, you can't go wrong with the curriculum.
Thank you, Martin. That's reminding me, our friend, our RE advisor, Helen Brown, is here, and the mission statement for her school was "everyone is sacred," and it was absolutely true. From the minute you walked in the door, you felt it and you breathed it. Thank you so much. Janie Day, just to say that Julianne has spotted you as a fellow Brummie, and she says that you need to come home, but I've said no, you are ours and you are staying with us. Nice try. I'm afraid the next one, there's no name, but it says unknown. You mentioned that your school is a deprived community, so whoever you are, unknown, please open up your mic.
Hello, I did put my name at the end.
Oh, yes, sorry, Daisy, I did that last week. I hadn't scrolled down far enough.
It's okay, I don't know why. It's on unknown.
Welcome back, Daisy.
Hello. We have touched on this question quite a lot since I asked it, but I'm just wondering, you mentioned that your school is in a deprived community. How did you go about communicating with the parents, and is there one occasion that you found your biggest achievement when trying to stop the inequality? Just some tips for RQTs and NQTs when talking to parents who might be from similar backgrounds.
Two things I could add, actually. One was we had a huge event last summer for the Feast of St. Peter and St. Paul, and we organised a mass that day, but we organised an outdoors mass, and we held a family picnic on our school field just before the Mass, and it was the most beautiful occasion, and the families came in to share the lunch with their children and to be together as a community, and it was just a really, really lovely occasion. And yet again, it came down to they came for their child. They came for their child, and that's the key. And the other part, I would say, in terms of connecting with our families, has come to me quite recently, because obviously of the situation that we're currently in, we are still trying to feed our free school meal children, and we have many. We are currently at 65, but it's about to go up to 67 children, because obviously in the current climate we have more families now that are becoming eligible and are currently applying. And we started in the first week of partial closure by saying that there were grab bags for collection, free school meal grab bags for collection each day, and we had probably about 4, I think was the maximum number collected, and we realised we just weren't getting to the children we needed to get to, and those weren't all children that were able to come in. They weren't they weren't vulnerable enough, if you see what I mean. So we started moving to hamper delivery. So we now every Monday deliver to the household a box of food for the week, which is from it's still from our catering company, and that has been powerful on 2 counts. One, because we're feeding everyone now. 100% of our children are being fed, but also because if we're going to find out where that child is, what their lived experience is, then what better than to be, albeit only being able to go to the doorstep and running away, but how powerful to meet that family exactly where they are. And the deeper I thought I knew this area really well, but there's so much of this area that I didn't know, and so much of our children's experiences and families' experiences that I knew nothing about. And actually just that simple thing of delivering that hamper has allowed me to experience that and built the connection, because they're grateful, so it's built the stronger relationship.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Daisy, for the question, and Dawn, yeah, for highlighting that. I mean, there's so much amazing stuff going on in our diocese and others. I see it on Twitter and Facebook all the time, and I know one of our schools this week opened up a food bank, if you like, just in the front of the school for parents to either donate to or take away from. Some fabulous, amazing stuff going on here, and many of you will think about leafy Devon. Our diocese has 7 local authorities, but Devon is a large area of it, and the area in Cornwall where our cathedral is in the top 2% of deprivation in the country, and many of our other areas, even in Torquay, some of the top 5% in Paignton and Torquay as well. So we do have a lot of need down here. Now, that was going to be our final question, but Candice, go on, slip in there, ask your question on the back of Daisy's.
Yeah, it was just on the flip side of that. On the flip side, you would have parents in a different area who are more likely to hold you to account for their child's education and their child's transformation. And as an RQT, NQT, or somebody who's new to a Catholic school, how would you approach that? And for somebody who doesn't have all the answers and, you know, is relatively new to a Catholic school?
I think it comes back to what Martin was saying about the curriculum offer being critical, being that gift, that is what it's all about. And so we mustn't ever forget that we are here to educate. That is the gift we're going to give, and the gift that's going to transform. The clear communication to all families would resolve that. It's about them knowing clearly what their child can do, what their child needs next, how we're supporting them. The communication for me always seems to be the thing that is critical, no matter what situation you're talking about. If we can get that part right, then we'll be absolutely fine. You're quite right to say that in areas where there is, and this obviously is generalisation, but I've worked in an area where there was less deprivation, and certainly we were held more to account there for children's progress and attainment in more specific ways, because some of those parents had the knowledge and the skill to be able to articulate that, and therefore their emphasis was different to the emphasis of some of our parents that we work with now. But I think it's just about honest communication. It's about showing that parent that you are doing the very best for their child, and that you're on a journey together, that it's a partnership.
Thank you, Dawn. We have overrun, of course, as often these things do, but it's really great because we're having such a good interaction here. So we are going to have to draw it to a close, because I'm aware that some people are at work and may have to get off, and Sister Judith has sent her goodbyes. She had another meeting at 3 o'clock. We're going to try and keep it to between 45 minutes to an hour each week. So I'm sorry if that means sometimes we have to cut across. But Brendan, I wonder if you would you be willing to just say a closing prayer for us as we say goodbye to everyone? Go open your mic, my lovely friend.
Just give me a second.
There we go. Can hear you now. Oh, he's gone.
Sarah, while we're waiting for Brendan, the video from last week and this one will be appearing on the Educarum website. So if you go into programs on the website, so the course programs, there is a heading for this program. And last week's video is already uploaded, and this one will be by the end of the week.
Yeah, so if you want to use them with staff, feel free. They're up there on the Educarum website. They do take up a fair bit of room, so I wouldn't try and download it yourselves. I would use it from the website. There we are, Brendan. Here's one I prepared earlier. Well done. Oh, beautiful. On you go, my lovely.
For many people. Have a look at the wonderful John O'Donoghue. He will always give you words to say. This is for our NQTs and anyone new to headship, and it's from John for a new position. Stay with me just for a minute. May your new work excite your heart, kindle in your mind a creativity to journey beyond the old limits of all that has become wearisome. May this work challenge you towards new frontiers that will emerge as you begin to approach them, calling forth from you the full force and depth of your undiscovered gifts. May the work fit the rhythms of your soul, enable you to draw from the invisible new ideas and a vision that will be to inspire. Remember to be kind to those who work for you. Endeavour to remain aware of the quiet world that lives beyond each face.
Beautiful.
Amen.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, everyone. Great to see you. This time next week, it's Raymond Friel, who is currently CEO of Plymouth Cast, who is going to be talking to us about the Catholic Church and what's it all about. A little bit of history of the Catholic Church there for anyone who's interested. I hope you can all come back next week. It's been fabulous to see you all. Brendan and Martin, are you happy to, and Bronya, you're there, are you happy to hang on, and Dawn, if you'd like to? We just have a little wash up. The rest of you, fabulous to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great week, everyone. God bless.
Thank you.